Hello and welcome back. If you are new here in this series, I take real students' responses to writing sample prompts from the Duolingo English Test. I critique them, I edit them, and I turn them into high scoring answers that will get a very good score on the Duolingo English Test. This week we are going to be reviewing a response from Boniface. So thank you, Boniface, for submitting your response. The prompt that was from last week was, what is the best piece of advice you have ever received? How has it impacted your life? Next week's prompt that you can respond to so that you have the opportunity to get it reviewed like this is going to be, artists and scientists both benefit society. Compare the contributions of artists and scientists. Which type of contribution do you think is valued more in your culture? Give examples. So, if you want to have the opportunity for me to review your response like I'm about to do with Boniface's response, just comment on this video. You can also find the prompt down in the description. Okay, let's take a look at Boniface's response. Here's what Boniface wrote. To speak about the best piece of advice I received, I think about something my grandfather tells me. He says it is important to focus on the things that we control. For example, in my career, I can no always controls my success. If I have a bad boss, then I cannot success. If I focus on this and need this to make me happy in my life, I won't be happy. It is better to focus on things like my hobby. For example, I like playing basketball. I can train in basketball and get better skills. I can play with friends and we can have fun together. I can play a lot or not play a lot. It is mine control. Another example is family. I don't have children or wife now. But in future, I can focus on being a good husband and a good father. This will make me feel success. Let's now score this response using the scoring criteria that Duolingo uses on the Duolingo English Test. The first one is content, which is basically how relevant are the ideas in the response to the prompt? How well does the response answer the prompt? In this case, I think that the response answers the prompt very well. All the ideas are directly related and relevant to the prompt. So on this one, I would say it's quite high, 130 or so. The only reason it's not greater than this is because there's not a ton of ideas. And to score above 130 on the DET is very difficult. It's not enough to not just make mistakes and have a good response. You really have to have an excellent response with a lot of ideas. So that's why. To be clear, 130 is still a very good score. That's high enough to get into almost any program at any university in the world. Discourse coherence. This is basically how well do the ideas in the response fit together? Is the response well structured? Is there a clear argument? Do the ideas flow? It's not confusing, things like that. In this case, I think that the argument flows very nicely. The ideas flow very nicely, very well structured, I would say. The only thing is it doesn't have a ton of ideas. So it feels a little short, a little brief. If you have more ideas, more explanation, more examples, then your writing is more convincing, it has more of an impact on the reader. So I would say as well, this is probably something like 120. The other thing why discourse coherence is a little lower than content is because this response doesn't use connecting words, which are desired in English. We like connecting words very much. So I'll talk about that in the next section. Next is vocabulary. This response uses pretty good vocabulary, not a ton of sophisticated vocabulary. However, the bigger problem is that this response has a lot of vocabulary mistakes. So it has the right word, but the wrong form of the word. So in the next step, when I go through thoroughly, I'll explain those cases. So in this case, vocabulary is actually not as good, about 80. And finally, grammar. There are quite a few grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes. So this also would score pretty low on grammar. So this response is somewhere around a 90 to 100, I would say, averaging out the different scoring criteria, which is a pretty good response. For the writing sample, 100 is not a bad score. However, I think with a little bit of tweaking, that this could get a much better score. So let's go ahead and work on that now. All right, so here we have the response, the original response, and I am going to go through and correct all the mistakes in step one. So to speak about the best piece of advice I received, I think about spelling mistake, typo, about something my grandfather tells me. He says it is important to focus on the things that we control. So first is, this happened in the past, so you need to say he said, past tense of to say. It is important to focus on the things that we control. We control is the correct conjugation of the verb control. For example, in my career, I can know always controls my success. That sentence definitely needs some work. For example, in my career, that's fine. I can not always control my success. If I have a bad boss, then I cannot success. This needs to be the verb succeed. Cannot succeed. Success is a noun. If I focus on this and need this to make me happy in my life, I won't be happy. Good sentence. It is better to focus on things like my hobby. Typically in English, we will say hobbies. This is more natural, my hobbies. For example, I like playing basketball. I can train in basketball and get better skills. That sentence is okay, but you can easily make it better by doing something like this. For example, I can practice. We don't really use the word train so much in English. I can practice basketball a lot and get better skills. A better word here would be develop. Get better skills is not incorrect grammatically, but develop is much better. I can play with friends and we can have fun together. Good sentence. I can play a lot or not play a lot. It is mine control. Everything's good there except this word mine. This needs to be, it is my control, and also you need to add the word in. It is in my control. In my control is the expression in English. All right, finally, another example is family. Pretty good transition. I don't have children. Children is already plural. Children's is not a word in English. Okay? I don't have children or wife now. There's only one wife he is referring to, so you need to add a wife. But in the future, I can focus on being a good husband and a good father. This will make me feel success. Success here is a noun, but you need an adjective. I feel bad. I feel good. I feel sick. Good, bad, sick. These are all adjectives. So you need the adjective form of success, which is successful. So just by fixing those mistakes, I think this response is now closer to 120, maybe even higher. Again, it has a good structure, good ideas. There were just mistakes related to vocabulary and grammar that really brought the score down. So now that we fixed those, this response would score significantly higher. Let me now take this response and turn it into a 160 response, or 145 and above. 160 on the DET is frankly very hard to get. But basically, I'll take this response and make it as good as I can make it, and I have gotten a perfect score on the DET twice. The first thing I would change about this response, now that we're trying to take it from a good response to an excellent or ideally perfect response, is I would remove this sentence here. So these types of sentences, these introductory sentences, are not good on the DET because what this is doing is unnecessary. To speak about the best piece of advice I received doesn't add anything to your response. You don't really need to introduce the topic because the topic is clear. You were told what to write or speak about. You don't need to repeat that. So a better way to begin is what I always say is answer the prompt or the question as directly as possible and as succinctly, which means as short as you can. Right? So basically, in your first sentence, you want to state your opinion or your main idea right away. So instead of saying to speak about the best piece of advice I received, start with this. The best piece of advice I have ever received, and you can see I'm just borrowing the language from the prompt. So this should be pretty easy to write. The best piece of advice I have ever received came from my grandfather. And then I can delete this second sentence here. I think about something my grandfather tells me. This is a great first sentence. He said, "It is important to focus on the things that we control." Good, we can keep that. For example, I would begin a new paragraph here. Once you begin to give examples and have arguments, sub-arguments to support your main idea, it's best to do those in individual paragraphs. It's a very neat organization. For example, in my career, I cannot always control my success. If I have a bad boss, then I cannot succeed. If I focus on this and need this to make me happy in my life, I won't be happy. This is good. Let's make it even better. I would say the most important example in my life is my career. At work, I cannot always control my success. It would be a bit better to phrase this as the following. At work, I cannot always, at work, whether I succeed or not is often beyond my control. Same idea, more sophisticated, elegant language to express the same idea. Then you could say, for example, if I have a bad boss, then I cannot succeed. I would expand this idea a little bit. If I have a bad boss, then I will struggle to do my best work and advance in my career. If I focus on my career and I need success in my career to make me happy in life, I likely won't be happy. Cool. So, much better first paragraph, adding some more advanced vocabulary so that I can build out the ideas a little bit. It is better to focus on things like my hobbies. For example, I like playing basketball. I would say this first sentence, good, but let's expand it. It is better to focus on things like my hobbies. It is better to focus on things where I have more control, like my hobbies. For example, I like playing basketball. I can practice basketball a lot and develop better skills. I can work on specific aspects of my basketball game, like shooting or dribbling, all by myself. So I am adding more specific information to expand on the example, which also gives you the opportunity to use more advanced vocabulary. In this case, on specific aspects of my basketball game, like shooting or dribbling all by myself. That entire sentence is full of advanced vocabulary. So you can see that adding advanced vocabulary and expanding on your ideas go hand in hand. I can, let's say, also play with friends, and we can have fun together, right? I can play a lot or not play a lot. It is in my control. I think it's a little better to say I can decide to play a lot or not play a lot. It is entirely within my control. Same ideas, just a little better phrasing. Another example is family. I don't have children or a wife now, but in the future, there's a mistake I didn't catch the first time. In the future is the expression. I can focus on being a good husband and a good father. This will make me feel successful. I would add a little more information here. For example, I can focus on learning how to be more patient and kind with my children and my spouse. This will make me feel successful because I will become a better person. So that response is already quite long. You could definitely write this much within the 5 minutes you have for the writing sample. My responses are about this long. This would score very highly, maybe 160, but certainly 145 and above. If we had more time, then it's always best to add a concluding sentence. For example, in conclusion, the advice my grandfather gave me has enabled me to lead a happier life. Okay. You don't need a whole paragraph for the conclusion. A sentence will suffice. However, I find students think far too much about the concluding sentence. They, for some reason, think it's necessary for a high-scoring response, and it is not necessary to have a concluding sentence for a high-scoring response. It is better to use the time you have after writing your response to go back and proofread. You will increase your score far more by fixing grammar mistakes like spelling mistakes and missing words and things like that than you will by adding a concluding sentence like this one. All right, that's all for today. Like I said, if you want to get feedback like this on your response, be sure to comment with your answer to the prompt that I provided at the beginning. That prompt is also down in the description. And please be sure to like and subscribe. That way you know when the next video comes out and you can see if I chose your response to be reviewed. And you can learn about all the helpful content that we put out all the time on Arno. Okay, that's all for today. Happy studying, and I will see you next time.